Okay, so today we're going to look at rational expressions. We start a new unit today. It's all about rational expressions, and the most important thing in this unit is to be able to factor. So before we begin with rational expression, let's start with reviewing simplifying rational monomials. Each of them have one term. So we've already done this. So we can write this out, x cubed, as x times x times x times y. And then 2x squared would give us 2x times x minus y times y. So remember, when we're multiplying and we're dividing factors, we can cancel these factors, and what's left would be our answer. So this would be x over 2. Okay? With the numbers, you can divide these on your calculator. You can just do 18 divided by 24 on your calculator, math fraction, and it'll give you the fraction. I think I'm going to try to do it in my head. 6 goes into 18 3 times. 6 goes into 24 4 times. And then I have x times y, and then x times y. So because we're multiplying, we can cancel. So I get 3x over 4. Okay, 12 over 48. 48 divided by 12 I know is 4. So that goes on the top. A cubed over a to the 5th. Remember, we subtract the exponents, and the bigger one says come to me. So since the bigger one is at the bottom, this would go to the bottom and be a squared. We have b over b cubed. Once again, the bigger one stays at the bottom. It's going to be b squared. We subtract exponents. And here we'll have c cubed, and it's at the top because I'm subtracting exponents. I can also multiply them out like I did here, but you can also just remember that. So 25 over 15, again, if you put that in your calculator, you get 5 over negative 3. And x squared divided by x is simply x. And then y over y squared would give me y on the bottom. And again, what you want to remember is that the bigger number, the bigger exponent, always calls the other one to the top. If we wrote that out, we have x times y over x times y. So we see that we're left with x over y. All right, that is just a quick review of dividing monomials. Now we're going to look at dividing, simplifying rational expressions. There are 3 easy steps to factor a rational expression. The first step is to factor. Factor is the most important step here. You want to factor your numerator, factor the denominator. You cannot simplify until both the numerator and the denominator are factored. So we want to set the denominator equal to 0 to find the restrictions, to find the domain. And if the numerator and denominator have the same factor, just like before, it divides to 1, which we call canceling out. So let's look at the very first one. We have 3x minus 6. To factor that, I can use, it's a GCF. I can factor out a GCF, and I get 3x minus 2. And I really can't factor out a 3. It's 3 times 1, but there's nothing else I can really do with that. 3 is a prime number. So now what we have to do is we have to simplify this by dividing both of them by 3. So the 3's canceled, and I'm left with x minus 2. I could write that over 1 if I like, but I really don't have to. Now, how do I find the restrictions? I find the restrictions by setting the denominator equal to 0. Is 3 ever equal to 0? No, so it has no restrictions. So its domain is all real numbers. Okay? For the next one, we're going to simplify first. So remember, we're going to factor out the numerator. So the greatest common factor here is 4. And if I factor out a 4, I get x minus 3. On the bottom, 4 is the greatest common factor as well. I get x plus 3. Okay? And what simplifies here? The 4 simplifies, so I'm left with x minus 3 over x plus 3. And how do I find my restriction? I set the denominator equal to 0. I could set it equal to 0 here, and I should have. So I get negative 12 4x is equal to negative 12. X is equal to negative 3. So the way I write that is that x cannot equal to negative 3. Because if x is equal to negative 3, that makes the denominator 0, and we can't have a denominator of 0. That's why we have to factor that out. I'm going to kind of skip around some of these, and then I'm going to have you do them on your own when we're done. If we look at x squared minus 16, the first thing we want to do is we want to factor the numerator. Remember, this is the difference of two squares, so I do x plus 4, x minus 4, and then this is a trinomial, so I have to do multiply 1 times 16. I get 16, x squared. And then I ask myself, what numbers can I multiply to get 16 and add to get negative 8, which means they both have to be negative. So my factors of 16 are 2 and 8, 16 and 1, and 4 and 4. And they both have to be negative. So that's going to be this one. So this will be x minus 4, x minus 4. Okay? So simplifying that, my x minus 4s, because they're the same, they cancel out, they divide to 1, and I'm left with x plus 4 over x minus 4. What are my restrictions? Both of these have to be, well, there's only one, so I have to set the denominator equal to 0. So I have x minus 4 equal to 0, so x is equal to 4. It just so happens that if I did it again, I get the same thing. So my restrictions is x cannot equal to 4. And my domain, that means, would be negative infinity to negative 4, union, negative 4 to 4, union, and then 4 to infinity. Notice I put them in parentheses. That means that it cannot be that value. Okay, I'm going to do this next one. I'm going to do this one. X squared plus 7x minus 8. So I have to factor both the numerator and the denominator. So sometimes I like to just come over here and just rewrite them. So I'm going to write this over here. So I have x squared plus 7x minus 8. And again, it's a trinomial. So I have to multiply a times c. That gives me negative 8. What can I multiply to get negative 8 and add to get 7? Negative 1 and 8. And because my coefficient is 1, I can just say that this is x minus 1, x plus 8. Oh, I don't know why I wrote it there. That's not my final answer. I'm just going to simplify that. So I have x minus 1, x minus 8. And then I have to come over here and factor this one. So I have 4x squared minus 8x plus 4. The first thing I ask is, what is the GCF? So I factor out a 4, x squared minus 2x plus 1. What can I multiply to get 1 and add to get negative 2? That is x minus 1 times 4. So I have to put all of that back together. So I have x minus 1, x minus 8, and then I write this over here, 4, x minus 1, x minus 1. What cancels? The x minus 1s cancel, so I'm left with x minus 8 over 4 times x minus 1. What are my restrictions? So again, I look at my denominator, and I set my denominator equal to 0, and again, we only have one restriction. X cannot equal to 1. Okay, so I'll do another one in this column. I have x to the 4th minus 4x squared. So once again, I'm going to take this one, bring it over here, and factor it, if I can write it correctly. X to the 4th minus 4x squared. The first thing I ask, is there a GCF? And there is a GCF, and the GCF is x squared. So I get x minus 4, x squared minus 4, which can be factored again because x squared minus 4 is the difference of two squares. So x plus 2 x minus 2. If I bring this one over here, I get x cubed plus 2x squared. So I factor out x squared. It has the greatest common factor, and I'm left with x plus 2. And that doesn't factor again. So let's put it all together. We get x squared, x plus 2, x minus 2, over x squared, x plus 2. And what cancels there? Well, the x squared cancels, the x plus 2 cancel, and so I'm left with x minus, I don't know why I changed that, x minus 2. Okay? What is my restriction? Well, I'd have to set this denominator equal to 0. So x squared equals 0, and x plus 2 equals 0. So I get x is not equal to 0, and x is not equal to negative 2, because I have to solve that for x. Subtract 2 from both sides. Okay? All right, one more, and then I'll give you a chance to practice. X squared minus 25 over x cubed plus 125. So again, if I factor x squared minus 25, I get x plus 5. It's the difference of two squares. I get x plus 5, x minus 5. This one, do you remember this? This is the sum of two cubes. So a is equal to x and b is equal to 5. And so if you recall, we factor that by doing a plus b, and then a squared minus, because my sign is opposite, so this would be minus 5x plus 25. And putting all that together, I get x squared minus, I'm sorry, why am I writing that? There, I keep doing that. I get x plus 5, x minus 5, all over x plus 5, x squared minus 5x plus 25. And the x plus 5's cancel, so I'm left with x minus 5 over x squared minus 5x plus 25. What's my restriction? My restriction would be x plus 5 equals 0, and x squared minus 5x plus 25 equals 0. So I know the first one, my restriction is x is not equal to negative 5. The second one, I just know from experience that this has imaginary answers. So we don't look at imaginary answers when we're doing this, so my restriction would simply be x is negative. X cannot equal to negative 5. All right, so can you do these 4 problems on your own? So go ahead and pause the video, and I'll come back with an answer in a second. All right, welcome back, and let's see if you got those correct. I don't have these off the top of my head, so just let me do it. X plus 2, and this would be 8. That would be 8. X minus 2. So it would simplify to x plus 2 over x minus 2, and my restriction is x cannot equal to 2. On the bottom here, I'm going to factor that to x plus 5, x plus 5, x plus 5, x minus 5. So my restrictions, x plus 5 cancel, so this would be x plus 5 over x minus 5. But my restriction, I have to look at both of these. So x plus 5 is not equal to 0, and x minus 5 is not equal to 0. So my restriction is x cannot equal to plus or minus 5. Okay, the next one would be x minus 6, x plus 6, x minus 2. And then I'm going to factor out a 3 here. I can't do that in my head. X squared minus 4x. That should be an x, sorry. X squared minus 4x plus 4. And I don't think that factors. 3, that does not factor. So I have 3 Yeah, it does, negative 2 and 2. So that becomes x minus 2, x minus 2. Only one of these cancel, though. The other one does not cancel. So that simplifies to x plus 6 over 3x minus 2. And x cannot equal to 2. Okay, last one. We have the sum of two cubes. So that is x plus x minus 3. And then x squared plus 3x plus 9 all over, this is the difference of two squares, so this is x plus 3, x minus 3. That cancels, bam, bam. And then I'm left with x squared plus 3x plus 9 over x plus 3. And my restrictions are x cannot equal to plus or minus 3. Okay, okay. All righty. Do your homework. Thank you.